Good afternoon, this is Miss Lisa from the Kenosha Public Library, and I want to wish you a happy Sloppy Joe Day, March 18th. Do you know you can celebrate virtually food on any day, and on March 18th, it's Sloppy Joe Day, and I have brought Sloppy Joe to our Charlie cart here at the Southwest Library. Now, what do you know about Sloppy Joes? I know a lot about Sloppy Joes. In fact, did you know that the original Sloppy Joe originated back in 1930 at a cafe in Sioux City, Iowa? Now, some other people say that Sloppy Joes originated in a place called Key West, Florida, that was inspired by a Cuban bar called Sloppy Joe's. What else? What is Sloppy Joe's? Well, essentially, what it is meat, and in here I have some ground beef because mostly people think of it as being ground beef. And what I've done in order to keep my beef nice and moist is I added a little bit of beef broth and a little bit of tomato sauce. And that's the other essential ingredient in a Sloppy Joe, is meat and tomatoes of some sort, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And of course, bread, and you can see I have bread. Other names for a Sloppy Joe would be a slush burger. That's another name for it. Yum Yums, I like that one. Spoon burgers, I could see why it would be a spoon burger, right? Because you're scooping it up and putting it in a sandwich. But it could be made out of beef. It could be made out of beans. Kidney beans, black beans. Don't limit yourself to one type of meat. You could use chicken, you could use pork. There's a lot of ways to make a Sloppy Joe. When I grew up as a kid, well, they used to have, they still do, it's called manwich. That was the original Sloppy Joe, and there was a commercial that they used to play all the time, and they would say, a sandwich is a sandwich, but a manwich is a meal. And essentially it is. And personally, I think a good Sloppy Joe is comfort food. Another way you can make a Sloppy Joe if you go to the stores is you could go and buy the packets, which basically just has the seasoning, and then it kind of tells you to cook your meat. Yeah, you always have to make sure you cook it. And then you're going to add this with probably a can of tomato paste or some tomato sauce. Some people, when they make their Sloppy Joes, might use ketchup as a sauce. Other people might use tomato sauce as a sauce. And then when you kind of look at them, you know, I always like to look at, I want food that's, when I'm making my Sloppy Joe, I want to make sure it's going to grab the meat. And this is, look at the Sloppy Joe mix here, the manwich, and see how it drips out. It's a little loose and runny for my preference, and versus ketchup. This is probably going to grab your meat a little bit better because the ketchup is a lot thicker. So it's going to add some more flavor to it. And then here's tomato sauce. Again, it's kind of thick. And then you have oregano and other spices in there. My personal favorite is barbecue sauce. And I usually use that, and I add a little Worcestershire sauce and some mustard to it. And there are other ways that you can do it. You can add all sorts of different vegetables. In my Sloppy Joe mix here, I just have sauteed a little bit of onion, but you could add carrots, bell pepper, because a good balanced meal basically has a veggie, a meat, and some type of carbohydrate or bread. Carbohydrates would be potatoes or bread, rice, pasta. And then the other thing that you want to make sure when you're making a Sloppy Joe or any dish is that you add some herbs or spices. Key one would be your basic, your salt and pepper. But there are other things you could add too. What about a Sloppy Joe with taco seasoning? Sloppy Joes can be made not only using bread, and the bread is a key source. For instance, if you want a real sloppy Joe, I was talking with Heather the other day about it. She always used to have a sloppy Joe on 2 pieces of bread. Well, when you put that bread and beef on there, when you start biting into it, it's going to drip down and be really sloppy. When I grew up, I never had the 2 pieces of bread. My mom always gave it to me with a hamburger bun. Equally as not as sloppy, but pretty close. It would always drip down. Me, because I don't personally care to be so messy and getting stuff all over my shirt, is I would probably use like a nice brioche or a thicker bun that you could get at a store, because it'll just stay in there pretty tight. You know what else helps your sloppy Joe stay in your sandwich is good old cheese. And don't just decide to just take one type of cheese. American cheese is usually your favorite, but maybe you want to try it using some Monterey Jack or some cheddar cheese or Swiss cheese. You know, changing your flavor profiles can make things a little different. Now, how about sloppy Joes with fries? Sounds pretty good. You go ahead, you throw some fries in there, and then you take your sloppy Joe mix and put it on top, and then just drizzle it with cheese. Sound yum? How about putting it in stuffed peppers? Now that's a twist. Or not limiting yourself to bread. Sloppy Joe on a tortilla. Another great way to prepare it. It's almost like doing a taco, but you could actually just put it in there, add your shredded cheese, and throw your veggies in there. And another fun way to do it. How about sloppy Joe nachos? Crunchy and good. Again, take your ground beef, put it on top, and then add some cheese, throw it in the oven for a little bit. Delish. My favorite, because I grew up with pasta, coming from an Italian family. Sloppy Joes with pasta and adding your cheese on top. These are all different ways to celebrate sloppy Joes. And another quick way would be going Asian style, adding a little teriyaki, brown sugar, and apple cider vinegar, and you mix it up. Delish. So, those are my pointers about celebrating Sloppy Joe Day. Why don't you try one of them? I think you might like it. Happy Sloppy Joe Day, everyone. From the Kenosha Public Library, good eats to you.